Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 late game offlaners, heroes that scale well into the late game from the position 3 role. And I do want to mention before we get into it, I'm going to be exempting a couple of heroes that I think are either better in different roles that can be played as offlaners but are better in different roles, or heroes I've put on previous lists. And the two heroes I'll be exempting from this offlane list is Nature's Prophet, because I put him on the safe lane list, and then Doom, because he'll be on a different list when we get there. But nonetheless, let's get into it. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like, literally, with the GameLeap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but like actually you want to become much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the GameLeap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below. I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. Let's start at number 5, and that is Tidehunter. Now, I think back in the day, Tidehunter could actually be much higher up on this list. I do believe there was a point in time where Tidehunter was one of the most dominant late game heroes in Dota. Now, what changed? What makes Tidehunter slightly worse now? But he's still on this list, so, you know, obviously he's very good, but what makes him a little bit worse now? Well, there's a couple of major things that I think have made Tidehunter slightly worse in the late game as time has progressed compared to some of these other offlaners on the list. And the first one is status resistance. The ability to just status resist 2 Ravages can allow you to potentially get through it, right? In the late game, this AoE Ravage is not that great of a stun. For instance, until it hits level 25, right, which is plus 1 second Ravage stun, which is a very key talent, I'm going to get into that in a moment. But until then, Ravage is only a 2.8 second stun. That's not that long. Obviously, you have 2 of them though, assuming you have a refresher in the late game, and you can start to pop off. But here's really where things start to get crazy with Tidehunter. If you get lucky enough to get a Timeless Relic as one of your tier 4 items, and you combine that with your level 25 plus 1 Ravage second stun talent, all of a sudden you have like 4.3 second Ravages, and 2 of them. You can nearly stun everyone on the enemy team, assuming they don't have status resist, which some of them probably will, for like 8.5 seconds. That is pretty unbelievable, and it's in a massive AoE. So especially in the late game when it can be very hard to cast spells, you're panicking, too much is going on, it's still honestly pretty easy to use Ravage. Blink in the middle of the enemy, click it, and pray they don't have BKBs going or not currently used. And that's honestly about it for Tidehunter. I will say Anchor Smash is honestly pretty good in the late game, but Kraken Shell isn't really amazing, and the reason why is Silver Edge is just such a common item nowadays. It has too good of build-up. Shadowblade and Crystallis makes the item kind of just a well-scaling DPS item. And that's a big problem for Tidehunter, because previously in the past, in the history of Dota 2, if you didn't have a few specific heroes with breaks, Tidehunter could comfortably push into any position on the map. That is absolutely not the case anymore. Tidehunter has to be wildly careful now, as Silver Edge is just a devastating item. Coming in at number 4, we have Spirit Breaker. Man, this hero in the late game, outside of Nature's Prophet, it's the Wave Shove God. And in the late game, people don't really understand how important Wave Shove is. The ability to give vision of the enemy, clear the creep waves, bring backdoor down, right? Just constantly bait rotations and get your gold up. And while doing all this, doing it safely. Probably safer than any other hero besides your unit heroes who can literally not send their hero at all. Spirit Breaker is your number 1. The fact that you can one-shot creep waves on a 7-second cooldown with 76% status resist is pretty unbelievable, right? It's one of those things where when you really understand this power, the ability to just clear creep waves, and by the way, you can do it invisible as well, because you can click Shadowblade while charging, which is pretty freaking good too. This hero is obnoxious to play against. On top of that, its ulti goes through BKB, charge goes through BKB. So in the late game, you have this massive problem against Spirit Break. If you have a 6-second BKB, which you will if you're a core, you're gonna get stunned for like 4 seconds. That's almost all of your BKB duration. And by the way, when that 4-second stun ends, the charge is back up in 2 to 3 seconds. If he has an Octarine, less. If he has a Spell Prism, less. You see what I'm saying? So basically, this hero is a nightmare in the late game because you can't really kill him in side lanes unless you have certain purges, in which case he can often BKB TP out, even if you have purges. and so he has an option there, because Spirit Breaker does buy BKB in the majority of games. I know you guys probably don't, because you're greedy. Okay. But yeah, this hero is pretty wild. Coming in at number 3, we have Legion Commander if you snowball, you know? I had to put Legion on the list, because, you know, it's like, I mean, she technically is a wild late game, if you get there. However, I will say, even if you're having a bad game, okay, even if your game sucks, still, I will say Legion at least has press the attack grants 2-second spell immunity, right? Which is pretty good. I wouldn't say this makes her the best late game hero. It's not like, oh my god, she pressed the attack. It's insane. It's like, yeah, it's very good in certain situations. It's actually very good in a ton of situations, so it's a very reliable talent. But really what we're talking about here is a Legion Commander that can get to a Silver Edge, AC, Satanic, BKB, Overwhelming Blink, bots timing. Something like this with 340 dual damage. You know, this is when this hero goes wild because it can run around at max movement speed. The shard guarantees that you can be max movement speed for a very long period of time. Especially if the game goes giga late game and you get to level 30, your hero, it's wild. It's very easy to save teammates. Your ability to solo kill heroes is unbelievably good. You can buy a nullifier for the pesky Aeon discs people are going to buy against you. Legion just, you know, I don't want to say that this hero is always good late game because sometimes you're going to have a Legion Commander who has Blink, Blade Mail, like Halberd, and then at 35, trust me, she ain't scaling into the late game. She's not going to make it. But if things are going well, then she deserves to be on this list. So it's a bit of an if, but she has the potential to be number 1 on the list if you're really snowballing. And coming in at number 2, this one's gonna surprise you guys. A lot of you guys probably thought this one would be number 1, but that's Enigma. Now, why is Enigma number 2? Well, I'll cover that when I go over the number 1 hero. But the big thing about Enigma is he's Enigma. Status Resist does not block Black Hole. Lincoln's does not block Black Hole. BKB does not block Black Hole. Something like Tidehunter struggles a little bit. Right? Can't put him number 2 because you can block the Ravages, right? You can get out of the way. It's not the case. Aeon discs don't get affected by Black Hole, right? It does not work. Status Resist does not work. BKB does not work. Lincoln's does not work. There is not really great options. I don't even think, does Wind Waker even work against Black Hole? You guys could comment that down below. Someone want to test it? I don't even think Wind Waker works against Black Hole. Don't quote me on that though. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's a pretty simple hero to understand in the late game. Actually, I mean, there's a couple of things that make him good. Eidolon's number 1 are really fantastic in the late game because you just have this low cooldown ability, which by the way, you have a lot of talents for, so they can become very powerful. In fact, there's a lot of players who actually prioritize the later Eidolon talents, not necessarily at level 10, but actually I even saw Zai take the Eidolon attack speed at 10, which I think is kind of meh considering the other talents pretty busted in my opinion. But either way, you have the ability to clear waves safely. And I've mentioned this multiple times now. I'll say it again though. In the late game, having heroes that can clear creep waves without showing themselves is a massive advantage. I cannot stress that enough. People do not understand this. Because if you're playing against an Nature's Prophet and you don't have safe wave clear, the game's like basically over in the late game because he's gonna force you to show with numbers disadvantages, he's gonna pick you off, and the game gets impossible. Right? So there's that. And Enigma's really good at that. On top of that, he has a stun, right? Which is always great. Just like Malefice, just great. It forces BKBs. And then Midnight Pulse. The ability to pierce BKB, right? It pierces BKB. It kind of just shreds, right? It's one of those abilities that no matter what the time in the game is, this ability seems to do a lot of damage. And because it's percentage-based damage, right? It's damage per second, percentage. The more HP people have, the more damage they take. So it's like this hero just scales. Enigma just naturally scales. He's always been the late game hero. He will continue to be that. And I don't think that's going to change for Dota's history. And finally, last but not least, number 1. All right, I know you're going to think, how is there a hero better than Enigma? This hero, in my opinion, actually counters Enigma to some extent, but that's Night Stalker. So what makes Night Stalker so broken in the late game? Well, really, it's the vision. It's primarily the vision. Now, there's a lot of vision heroes in Dota, and, you know, they could be on this list, for instance, like Beastmaster, but it's just a constant roaming, moving vision, and it's also what you can do with that vision. In the late game, Night Stalker is a menace, because when you have a Nullifier and a Blink Dagger, you can jump anyone you want, and you're almost always going to get the jump. On top of that, when you get this jump, you can silence them. for a very long time and you hit extremely hard because Dark Ascension gives you 150 bonus damage. That's obviously buffed up by the 80 attack speed you get from Hunter in the Night. And then on top of that, really what's broken about this hero in the ultra late game are his talents. At level 10, he gets 8-second Dark Ascension duration. This brings Dark Ascension's duration up to 38 seconds. Then, on top of that, you have a 50-second Dark Ascension cooldown talent at 25. If you buy an Octarine core in the late game, you can have almost permanent uptime on your ulti. Now, I don't necessarily recommend buying Octarine core, I just want to mention that that's something you can consider if your team really relies on the vision, which most team comps do in some regard. It just kind of lets you get the initiation. But the bigger thing to understand is really that Dark Ascension is an 80-second cooldown with a 38-second duration in the late game. That means almost half the time you can see basically the whole map. That's obviously, all right, it's not the whole map. I know some of you guys got triggered to like speed. It's not even close to the whole map. It's like 1/5 of the map. Okay, you can see 1/5 of the map. All right, you happy? You can see 1/5 of the map. That's pretty good, man, considering you can solo kill a huge percentage of Dota heroes. Pick up a nullifier, you silence them, you click them, bada bing, bada boom. They're gonna take a spill. That's how it goes. And you might be like, okay, how is this better than Enigma? You know, how can you compare a single target hero to Enigma in the late game? Because the thing is, it's brutal to play Enigma against Night Stalker. It is so hard to get a good black hole when there is a hero that can run at you. Now you might be thinking, oh, but just buy Lincolns. It's like, okay, but if we're really talking late game here, Night Stalker can take any of the neutral items that pop Lincolns, and then he can nullify the Enigma. And on top of that, you go Basher. After that Basher, you go Abyssal. So you can get on top of this Enigma, potentially kill him from full HP, and go from there. On top of that, if your team sees the Enigma coming, because you have a Night Stalker, right, usually Enigma tries to counter-initiate, it just doesn't work. It doesn't happen. All right, and that's going to be all for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know which one you want me to do next, position 5 or position 4. And yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people might disagree with me on the Night Stalker one, but playing against this hero in the late game, the only major disadvantage he has, which I will admit, if Night Stalker is playing late game and his team doesn't have wave clear, he won't be able to do too much actually. It'll be very hard for him to make plays. But if you have a gem and you have wave clear on your team and you can carry that gem around, the enemy team will have zero vision. You're always going to see every single ward that you pass by, so you can de-ward everything better than every other hero in the game. And on top of that, your team is going to be able to hunt after they clear the wave. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I'm out.
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.